Hi, Ed.
Hi, Tony.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. Thanks for spending a little bit of your Valentine's Day
Of course.
Sunday. I apologize to your wife for me for taking up so much of your time.
And you
Um,
should apologize to yours as well.
yeah, fortunately, my wife likes to sleep in, so I'm not even sure she knows I'm doing this. She is just so that's why I wanted to do it early in the
Bright and
morning so I could
early.
try to get
Yep.
them all done before she wakes up. So as you know, I wanted to do a few Tony takes at the end of this negotiation process before ratification for us to go back to our original platform and kind of go full circle and think about, almost like grade ourselves, if you will, and thinking about those points. And I'm asking each member of the negotiating team to talk about a couple of different ones that I think either you're well suited for, or I just wanted to kind of distribute them a little bit.
Okay.
And then I have a couple of questions that I'm going to ask everyone. Um, so let me just show the people who are going to be watching this what these are. So I'm going to ask Ed about the financial transparency. So really going into the wage and benefits proposals will be advanced that accurately reflect the current state and not speculation. I think this was a big hot topic of this past summer, and I'm going to want you to talk a little bit about that.
Mhm.
And then I think the tenure clock extensions, so for serious illness, if you become a primary caregiver, military service, immigration, so on and so forth. So
Mhm.
wanted to talk about both of those. And then my two questions that I'm asking all of our members is why are you recommending a yes vote? And if you took your hat off as a negotiator, would you think the contract is good for us? And then finally, just kind of your overall impressions. So I'm going to turn this off and kind of just get back to us. And
Okay.
so let's just get into the biggest ticket item. Well, actually, no, you've not been on Tony's Take. So
No, I
introduce
haven't.
this random guy, Ed. Introduce yourself to the people at home.
As Tony said, I'm Ed Evans. I've been a faculty member at the University of Akron since 1998,
You are
and
really old.
I am.
Yeah, yeah.
That's all the gray hair.
That's the gray. Yeah, I love
Mhm.
it. Okay,
Yep.
go ahead. So 1998.
Yep. At the time, I was hired into the Department of Chemical Engineering, which is now the Department of Chemical, Biomolecular, and Corrosion Engineering. So it reflects added specialties within the department, and been pretty involved with academic programs within the department and within the college ever since I got here. So,
That's great. Good. And I'll say Ed is that person on our team that as soon as we have consensus on something and we're feeling really good as a team moving forward, Ed sort of sits there. He has this like famous look of he always kind of, yeah, he puts his hand in his hair. I'm sure his daughters are familiar with that as well. He puts his hand in his hair and he's like, can you just go hold on one second? I don't mean, can you just go back a minute? So, and we know it's going to happen. We're like done for the night. It's like 8:30 p.m. We're ready to be done. And Ed's like, no, can you just go back to page one? We're on like page seven. So Ed is incredibly detail oriented, which I think is something that he really brought to the table. And he has a great analytical mind that has helped us kind of go through really the weeds of different things that I don't know that I even realized before getting on this team that we would really have to do. So we're going to jump into maybe the biggest ticket item, which is
okay.
wages and the kind of financial end. So, as it says, wage and benefits proposals will be advanced that accurately reflect the current state of the university's finances. And I think this past summer, we saw this really kind of scary projection that we were going to
Mhm.
be millions and millions and millions of dollars in the red. And really, what, a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I mean, that's never come to fruition.
Right.
And so, in the contract that we are proposing or in the tentative agreement, we're not taking a raise for 5 years, right?
Right.
And so given that we're in the black right now, like how do you make sense of all that? Can you give us a little bit of insight on what's happening with that proposal?
So I think in general, especially right near the end of all of the negotiations, I think the team and myself got the impression that the administration is really trying to do a much better job going forward with these projections. I agree 100%. It seems like my entire career here at the University of Akron has been one budget crisis after another that really never comes to fruition. And we've talked a lot about that over the years. Why does this keep happening? And so as part of those conversations, I think we got a better sense as to why those things keep happening and how the university in the past has addressed those projected shortfalls. Going forward, the administration has committed to keeping us more in the loop, so to speak, and being more transparent with the changes, if you will, in the budget on a more regular basis. So not, after the fact, but as it's happening. And they gave some pretty good examples of how these things can happen, right? So we're all familiar with, part of the reason the university is now in quote unquote better shape is that the state decided to make more funds available. And that's great that they did that. And the university made a decision that was both a financial one and a morale one, right? How do we need better morale on campus. We need to come together as faculty, staff, administrators, everyone, students, to work together to particularly increase enrollment at the University of Akron over the next several years. And so this, I think there was a balance there, right? They certainly didn't have to do what they did. Maybe from a financial standpoint, they didn't want to do this, right? Because they want to really build up what they call their cumulative reserve and put us in a much healthier position. But at the same time, in order to do that effectively, we've got to have everybody on board. And so
when you say they didn't have to do what they did, are you talking about ending the
right.
The pay cut by they reduced it by 6 months? Is that right? So they didn't have to financially, but you're talking about that balance between kind of
right. And I think we're going to see in the strategic planning that's coming out that the focus is going to be on getting everybody together to work on increasing enrollment at the University of Akron to get us in a much healthier financial situation. So I think in the end, there were some real positives for us financially, in addition to the sort of stability that we get over 6 years. From a financial standpoint, the percent contribution to healthcare is going to remain flat. So that's a positive, right? There's less concern about those percentages. Should be no concern about those percentages increasing over 6 years. That's pretty good. And there are opportunities for us to maybe not get increases to our base, but to get whether you want to call them stipends or bonuses or lump sum payments, those are in the contract, right? And so if we work together, get enrollment up and it goes up, then there will be some of these payments that come out that, are roughly equivalent to a percentage and a half raise over across the whole raise pool.
So can you tell me a little bit? So I agree, right? As another negotiator, I agree the healthcare and honestly, I feel like or at least I heard more from our buff about healthcare concerns than I did about wage concerns. So I feel like that was a huge concession on the part of the administration and a big win
Mhm.
for us to then take this sort of pay freeze after our, temporary reduction. But can you talk me through a little bit of, well, we're in the black now. Why do we have to do it now? Like, why do we have to do it at all? And I'm talking about the pay reduction now, not the freeze.
Right.
But why are we taking this pay reduction at all now when we are very clearly financially healthy?
So I think this is, in my opinion, related directly to the morale issue and the getting everybody on the same page. The university, and I think rightfully so, wanted to make sure that on a sort of per person basis that there were equal concessions across the board. And so the rest of campus, if you will, took the concessions, as we just talked about, over the first 6 months of the year. And, so in a sense, now we're doing the same thing. Our concession will be spread out over 12 months, but it will be on a sort of, like I said, on a per person basis, will be the same as what the rest of campus just took. So, we've got to move forward. The only way to do this the best way to do this is to get the overall morale at the university moving in a positive direction, everybody working together and, looking forward.
So I think it's fair to say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here. So one of the reasons I have Ed talking about this is we have now, I think, as a negotiating team, seen a little bit more of the behind the scenes of the budget. They've been a little bit more transparent, how it works, what goes into it. Certainly things that I think are kind of above my pay grade, in terms of just understanding the nuances of what goes into this huge organization's budget. And it seems fair to say that just because the budget seems black now, it may or may not continue. The projections that people are talking about isn't just hyperbole. It isn't just like, I'm just going to arbitrarily choose some projection down the road, but there is a relationship between what we have today to what we could sustain, right? And so,
Yeah.
It seems as though us being in the black today, while it's great, it's very similar to my own budget at home. I may have ended 2020 with, I'm in the black, I did pretty well, but I know that my furnace is just about to go out, or, my hot water tank is just, whatever it is with houses that, well, we need a new car because mine is on its last leg. And so I think when you talk about the financial health of the university, which I'm not sure I ever really thought about, I think I've been very short term with the financial health of the university. But there is things that are going to be coming due. There's things that are down the road, right? So just because we're black now doesn't mean we're out of the woods, so to speak, in all of the, and not just UA, but in any organization, right?
Right. Yeah, that's right. And it, again, it was a decision, a balanced decision between financial responsibility and morale on campus. And what their plan is, and I think this sort of goes along with what you just said, they're trying to maintain, and not just maintain, but build their cumulative cash reserve to the point, I assume, where when we have these fluctuations, that it's not going to be a panic situation. We've got enough reserve where we can absorb a decrease for a year and then build it back up, right? You don't want to be running your home budget on a month-to-month basis as much as possible. You want those reserves in case things happen. Like you said, if the furnace goes out, you want to be able to cover that. And so that's their plan over time, to build the cash reserve so that there is more stability and less, crisis management going forward. And so, yes, while we're in the black this year, we're still trying to increase that cumulative cash reserve so that we can handle these fluctuations going forward. I mean, we cannot be anywhere close to a zero cumulative cash reserve. That would be, for a university with a budget that's in the hundreds of millions of dollars. That's not
tenable.
You can't do it.
I mean, that's like having zero in your savings account, right?
Right. Right.
Like you're just going to have to continue to borrow money, and eventually that's just not feasible.
Right. Yeah.
So in your head, and I recognize with any budget questions, there is a little bit of guesswork, right? Because we only have, now, but do you feel as though, one of the things on this platform was financial transparency. And I feel like I haven't been here quite as long as you have, but I feel like in my 15 years here, we have been asking for financial transparency I feel like all the time. It's been like this battle cry of the faculty to want financial transparency. Do you feel as though through these negotiations that there was a little bit more of financial transparency, or do you feel like that's still just sort of management rights? They're not going to kind of share with us. Where do you sit with that?
Well, like you, this is my first experience on the negotiating team, and it's my first experience really having any interaction with the university budget. But my understanding from people that were involved previously is that, yes, they were significantly more open and transparent with the budget and the things that they were thinking about than they have been in the past, right? So as a sort of simple example, in the past, they might send out a PDF document of the Excel spreadsheet, right? Can't do much with that because you don't see any formulas, if you will, in terms of how quantities were calculated. This time around, they sent us their spreadsheet with the formulas and the assumptions that they were using, and we had a very quantitative, specific discussion about how that spreadsheet was built and what the assumptions were and what went into each one of those lines. So it's a very good start, very, very good start. And I really hope we can continue, because I think it should help the entire process. We've got a campus full of really smart people, much smarter than me, about how to manage these budgets and how to, work toward better financial stability. If we can get them involved in a constructive way, then I think the whole campus will benefit.
Yeah, and I'll say as an aside, when we got that spreadsheet, that Excel file that was very, very complicated, Ed, with all the excitement of like Christmas Eve, started playing with those numbers and trying to figure out how everything worked. And really, I think the administration was wanting us to do that and to try to figure out where is the balance between sort of financial health and morale building and fairness and all of that stuff. So it was nice having someone so quantitatively minded on the negotiating team to be able to kind of get in those weeds a little bit and ask the kinds of questions that perhaps I wouldn't have necessarily been able to. So one more thing about, go ahead. Did you want to comment on that?
Well, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but I think the strength of the negotiating team on our side, and I think to a certain extent on their side as well, was that there was a balance of perspective, right? There were people from very different backgrounds, very different approaches to things, and we all brought those perspectives and approaches to each problem. And I think that's why it ended up in a reasonable contract for the faculty, right?
Yeah, I agree entirely. So I do want to give you credit for which kills me to say. Ed and I have this love-hate relationship, but which we don't even really know each other. We've met each other in person one time.
Right.
But I do need to give you credit. I had a colleague who emailed us really early on in the negotiations about, I think it was the budget reduction. How much of a percent reduction, not budget reduction, but our pay deduction, how much of a percentage. So if I make X amount of money, I'm going to get this percentage kind of cut, right? So I'm going to make that concession. And I had a colleague who emailed me really early on saying, well, what about people who make, let's say $79,999 over $80,000, right? So there's a dollar difference, but they're going to be in this huge, not huge, but they're going to be a whole percentage or 2% away from each other. And one's going to have to be cut a lot more. And so how did you, kills me, but I've seen people write this formula down. So can you just explain to people in sort of layman's terms or layperson terms what we did to sort of avoid that financial cliff, if you will, between the categories?
Right. So this was really Bill Rich's idea, right, to smooth out the change and make it just a linear function that would determine the reduction in pay rather than these, as you said, sort of the steps, right? So the problem with the steps, whether it's pay cut or healthcare or whatever, somebody, like you just said, somebody right at the edge of an upper level may actually drop below into the next level and end up getting paid less than somebody in that lower tier because of the way that was structured. So all we did really was just take all of that data and just do a simple regression, almost just a trend line fit to that data to make it smoother and in effect fairer for everybody.
So it's basically a direct result of exactly what my pay is. It's
Right.
an equation, it's a percentage that my percentage is unique to me. And
Right.
it's, kind of a, like you said, just kind of a linear fit or
straight line fit.
A straight line fit. And the administration seemed fine with that. I think one of them, I think their chief negotiator was like, this is a great idea in general, instead of having these, because I think that's a problem, right? With any time you categorize continuous data.
Right.
So yeah, the lawyer told the engineer and they kind of did their thing and smoothed that out. So that's great. Okay, so let's move on a little bit to, and I don't remember this coming up in our negotiations, so this may have happened before us, but one of our number 8 of our platform was proposing tenure clock extensions in the cases of, and there's multiple things, serious illness, primary caregiver, military service, so on and so forth. Were we able to accomplish that?
So I'm sure, as the faculty have heard before, we had these subcommittee meetings and we had main table discussion, right? So this topic was handled in subcommittee, and my experience in subcommittee, and I think yours as well, was very positive, right? We had really good conversations in those subcommittee meetings about what's best for the faculty, what's best for the university. And so that was really great. And this is an example of that. Although I will say that this particular item was something that was already basically negotiated in the previous negotiation last spring. So they had established this and done all the hard work, had all the hard conversations, if there were hard conversations about it. And so we just moved it forward into this contract. So that was a really good addition or change for the faculty going forward, and
yeah, for sure,
a really good step that was made in those previous negotiations.
Yeah, I think this is probably a good point to say. A lot of the work, aside from, Article 15, 29, the pay, the healthcare, a lot of our language work which some was really substantive like this, was done before we came
Right.
on the scene,
Mhm.
right? So, obviously there was a contract that was very close to being agreed by both sides before the pandemic hit. And then the
Right.
pandemic hit, and then, obviously priorities changed and things really got, diverged.
Mhm.
And we remember those events. So yeah, this was one of the things that I don't think anyone really had a problem with, because this was something that's super healthy for the not only the faculty but the university. So that was good.
Absolutely. And in that conversation in subcommittee, it was just general agreement that, yeah, we need to do this. This is the right thing to do. And
Yeah.
we didn't spend a whole lot of time on it. We just said, yep, okay, let's move on.
Yeah. And that was my experience in subcommittees too, is I feel like they're smaller. The focus was not on the legal aspects of the contract, but more purely the academic sides of the contract. And I think, not to insult our fantastic attorneys, on any side, but it's kind of nice when the attorneys aren't in the room and you could just talk about an academic issue,
Right.
that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me get to your kind of general impressions here.
Mhm.
I'm asking everyone, you are recommending a yes vote
Mhm.
for ratification, and so my first question is why? And then my second question is, if you could disentangle or take off your negotiator's hat, do you think this is a good contract for you as a seasoned, full-time, full professor faculty member here?
So yes, I am recommending that the bargaining unit faculty or the AAU membership ratify this contract. And for me, the main reasons that I have that recommendation is that the contract provides stability. And I think when the AAUP has stability, really the rest of campus has stability. And so I think everybody on campus is looking for that. And we've created a contract that is fair, and it acknowledges the challenges for the university going forward. Uh, and so that's the main thing for me. And I've gotten more involved, uh, not only through the negotiations, but through university council and the strategic planning group, and trying to listen to what the representatives from the rest of campus are saying and what they're feeling and what their perspective is. And that's why I say I think creating stability is going to be really important. So that's number one. I think in conversations with their negotiating team, they're talking about fairness across campus, and that's also important, right? And so that is built into this contract to some extent as well. We don't represent anybody else other than AAUP, but in the negotiation, the concept of fairness for everyone was there, and I do think that's important.
Yeah, I do too. I I concur entirely. I think, having a 6-year contract, it just feels to me like something that I could then just breathe easy, and we can go
Right.
back to being academics, and we can go back to being professors, and just focusing on elsewhere, focusing on our effort. Certainly when I was hired, I was not thinking that I would be on a negotiating team for a
No.
contract, right? That's not something
No.
you ever think about, right? So this is not part of my conception of what this job was going to be like. So I'm looking very much forward to going back to our normal, even though we're living a new normal in the pandemic. But
Right. But I
all right,
think
yeah,
that, so I agree with you. I think we do have to focus, though, as a campus on the issues and challenges of recruiting, enrollment, retention. We have to. And so that this contract, the strategic plan, it's all really geared toward that. And even within the compensation articles, right? It's all mostly based on enrollment. And that's because that's the key to financial stability for the university. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. I mean, I've heard that for the last 22 years.
Yeah.
So while, you said that there aren't raises to base salary until the last year, right? There are these stipends, bonuses, whatever you want to call them, that will, soften that a little bit. And so I think there's definitely opportunity there.
Actually, now that we've gone back a little bit to finances, I want to throw out a question to you that I've gotten a lot before we go to your overall impressions. There's a ton of spending on what I would call auxiliaries, and what other people would probably shortcut to athletics. And there's been this, I feel like, again, since I've started here, this almost like this fight between why are the academics always getting cut and athletic spending is just through the roof, or whatever. So I'm wondering if you could shed light on, why don't we just cut athletics, or why don't we just cut football, or go to Division II, or I feel like it's always about football. Obviously it's about the big stadium. We have all this kind of anger, and would that just would that solve our problem?
Well, it's cuts to athletics like that, significant ones to athletics right now, will not solve our problem over the next 6 years. And so that's really not an option right now. But that's not to say that we shouldn't really focus and get involved with the discussions about how to deal with this, the financial impact of not only athletics, but other units, so to speak, on campus, and figure out if there's a way to reduce that financial burden going forward. We can't just kick the ball down the road anymore. That's not an option. And I hope that that's one of the main benefits of this increased transparency that they're talking about putting in place, so that we can have those conversations. The board has said that they want to see a substantial decrease in spending on athletics. So we've got to watch that. We've got to make sure, to the best we can, that either they reduce the spending on athletics, or that athletics increases their revenue, or a combination of the two. And we've, as I said before, we've all got to work together on enrollment at the University of Akron. What is athletics' role in that? We need to know. How are they helping? And can they help any more? I don't know. And we need to be more quantitative about it going forward, right?
Yeah, I agree. So, okay, overall impressions of negotiations. I'm getting lots of questions about just how was it? Was it super acrimonious? Was it, really antagonistic, or is everyone friends now? Is it, so what, this is your first year, my first year, actually our entire negotiating team's first year, except for Bill Rich.
Right.
So, we were pretty novice coming into there, and none of us had negotiated over the summer. So what were your impressions?
Yeah, I mean, when I don't know how many hours we had for this interview, but when I first got started with this, when Rich approached me about joining the negotiating team, I was really worried because I know some of the previous members of other negotiating teams, and those people were really smart and much smarter than me, much more politically savvy than me. And so I didn't really know how I was going to be able to contribute. And I think I told Rich that from the beginning. Yeah, I will. I'd love to help. I'd love to get us to a positive conclusion. I just don't know what my role is going to be.
Yeah.
So I was intimidated by that from the beginning. But just focusing on our side of the table, so to speak, that working together with that group made it easier for me to contribute, right? And feel like I could find my way, like find the way that I could help and contribute. And I think everybody did that, right? And so that was very rewarding, right? I'm going to miss that collaboration. You know, I feel like telling Provost Winsick or President Miller, like if you need a Tiger team for something, let me tell you who you should ask. Not to put any of the rest of you on a short list for more work, but when it comes to the negotiations overall, it was an interesting learning experience for me, especially watching our attorneys and how they managed the whole negotiation process, and when they pushed, when they held back, when they, you know, how they thought about, well, let's get this done, let's move this forward, and because we can, right? We need to lock some of these things down, let's do that. And they found a way to do it. And of course, like any negotiation, there was push and pull, right? And there's, you know, figuring out, okay, where is the other side going to give and where aren't they going to give? And so there was definitely some that I don't think I got too involved with that. You know, it was just sort of observing and then talking about it after the fact.
Yeah. Our debrief sessions were great.
They were awesome. As I mentioned before, I think the subcommittee work was that was by far for me the most satisfying thing, whether it was the literal subcommittee work on Articles 11 and 13, for me anyway, or the budget subcommittee meetings that we had with the provost and the chief financial officer and Provost Ramsey, or Associate Provost Ramsey. Those conversations, all of those were really productive, and I felt like there was mutual respect for everybody sitting in those meetings, that nobody was dismissed, nobody was, you know, shown any level of disrespect or anything either way, right? It was both sides.
Yeah, I agree.
Very collaborative. So that was really satisfying to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, for me, there was this, I forget which meeting it was, but I'm sure you remember. I feel like there was this like middle point that everything prior was a little bit antagonistic, and there was a lot of anger about the summer on both sides, and we just were like really doing this. And then there was like this meeting, I feel like it was right before the holiday break, that things just started, and maybe it's when we went into mediation that we started to, I don't know, talk to each other or let our defenses down. I'm not sure what quantifiably it was, but I feel like my first 2 months felt very different than my, last month,
Absolutely.
month and a half.
Absolutely.
I felt like we were like just spinning on a rat wheel. Like, what are we even doing? And then there started to be some movement, and all of a sudden it was like, wow, we may actually do this.
And then again, there was that same sort of transition, maybe even a more significant one in the last week or two.
Oh, it was crazy.
Right.
It went from, we have all these meetings that we're going to continue to schedule, to we may have a tentative agreement today, whatever day that was.
Right.
That there was just a huge amount of movement. And I do think particularly the budget subcommittee helped a lot with that. Because again, when lawyers aren't in the room, there isn't so much of the legalese. And so there isn't so much of that, I'm going to push, when do I hold back? It was just more like colleagues talking. And I think that helped propel that, which is, I think, why we had those meetings. Like, I think that was by design, to get out of some of that gridlock.
And I guess looking forward, I hope that we can maintain that dialogue through these through the proposed, if you want to call it shared governance or subcommittees or whatever it is it's going to be, I hope that we can kind of keep that going. So then when we get to the next negotiation, it's much more collegial from the beginning, and we can get right to the main issues quickly with a mutual understanding, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So the final question that is off the cuff that I'm going to ask everyone is, are you going to be on the negotiating team in 2026? And do you have any aspirations to be the chief negotiator? Because in my interview with Rich, he adamantly says he's done.
no, yeah, I believe that on Rich's part. I mean, he really, really worked very hard, and honestly, he's one of these people, right? That I knew the previous chief negotiators, and he falls right into that. It's like he was cut from the same mold as those folks. Very smart, very hardworking. And I think, to me, Rich's biggest strength for me, was his willingness to listen to everybody and to take everybody's input. That, when we have so much to do and so little time to do it, to keep focus on that was really, really great. So, I almost go back to that same first feeling that I had before, right when we first started this. I'd be happy to help if I can help.
Yeah.
So, and I think I would be very curious to know who else is on the team, right? Because I know what I'm looking for in the characteristics, and if it's not going to, if we can't set up a team like we had, then I think it's going to be hard for me to agree to do it.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think, and Rich and I talked about, our team was just, we really gelled, and we weren't afraid to disagree with each other, and we weren't afraid to challenge each other, but there was so much respect, and everyone brought something different to the table. And I don't know, I feel like it's ruined me for the rest of my career. Whenever I'm going to be on a team like this, I'm going to be wishing it was, us. Which is just it's just such a strange thing in my kind of mid-career life, to feel like I met these people who I really didn't know super well, if at all, who now have become just super important to me and have really helped me grow as a scholar, academic, university citizen, all of that. So,
do you even know how you got on the negotiating team?
I don't, but Pam asked me directly.
Yeah.
But do you know how I got on the negotiating team? Oh, was it you? Did you make this freaking thing happen? I can't stand you. This solidifies this for life. You threw my name out there?
Oh yeah.
How did you even know? When did we even? It was the one faculty senate meeting we had
Well,
together.
there were a couple of faculty senate meetings where you had just come on board as a faculty senator, and we'd be in these discussions, and I'd have however it was working, I'd have my hand up or whatever, right? And I want to say something about this issue, and you had your hand up first, and you said exactly what I was going to say. It happened easily 5 times. And so I'm like, wow, she's really bright and very articulate and not afraid to say what she thinks, right?
Certainly the last point. I don't know about the bright and articulate, but certainly not afraid to say what I think. That's funny. Thank you for the hell that I've been in for these last, 400 plus hours. But in all seriousness, it's probably been perhaps one of the most important things I've ever done in my career. Like, it just feels like it was I don't know. I don't even know how I would explain what it feels like and what it felt like. And hopefully we will bring this ratification to a win and close this chapter for a while. Thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Ed, for this
Sure.
interview and
Thank
for
you,
sharing
Tony.
with us some of this information. And hopefully we'll get our win soon. I'm going to turn off the recording.
Okay.